there is no collusion between me and my campaign and the Russians.
Did anyone involved in the Trump campaign have any contact with Russians trying to meddle with the election?
Absolutely not, and I discussed that with the president-elect just last night. Those conversations never happened. I hear people saying it like it's a fact on television. That is just not only inaccurate and false, but it's dangerous.
Does the president-elect...
And it does undermine our democracy.
Is Vladimir Putin someone you would respect? Someone who kills journalists, who's invaded Crimea? Is that a man you respect?
I mean, stop it with that kind of stuff. I mean, this is a nuclear state in Iran.
Sir? Stop it with
saying
what?
That you know how you're describing a leader in the world that is actually that we have to deal with. We're dealing with him right now.
May I ask you?
We have to deal with Russia.
Without a doubt,
we have to deal with Russia. We cannot make Russia an enemy.
Paul Manafort was investigated. Carter Page was. You yourself have spoken on Russia's state-owned TV. From an outsider's point of view, it seems unusual to have so many people in one campaign tied to a very dangerous foreign government.
Well, I will tell you, the first couple of names that you mentioned, they're not tied to this campaign anymore. And, what we really ought to be talking about is the fact that the FBI just reopened a major national security investigation against Hillary Clinton because they discovered 650,000 emails on a pedophile's laptop in the name of Anthony Weiner.
So when 17 intelligence agencies say it was Russia behind the WikiLeaks hacking...
Yeah, I'm not sure all 17 have said that. I don't agree with that.
How many people have to say that there's nothing there before you realize there's nothing there?
Every time Russia's brought up, they say, oh, Trump, what do I have to do with it? I have nothing to do with Russia, folks, okay?
The very fact that a few news organizations, not this one, trafficked in opposition research and this salacious garbage, I think, was deeply troubling to millions of Americans.
But what about the intelligence community?
Whatever the source.
Did Mike Flynn ever discuss lifting sanctions in any of those conversations? Do you know?
I talked to General Flynn yesterday, and the conversations that took place at that time were not in any way related to new U.S. sanctions against Russia or the expulsion of diplomats.
All right.
Some of this derives from this opposition research memo, I guess, Chris, that made its way around the internet. I remember there was about 24 hours where Michael Cohen, who has worked in the Trump organization for many years, was accused of having a meeting in Prague, and finally some news organization did a little checking and found out that it was a different Michael Cohen, and Michael himself had never actually been to Prague.
But I do want to ask you a question.
Was at a baseball game with his son in August of last year.
I understand that. And in fact, if I may, the senators specifically asked FBI Director Comey about that, and he refused to answer. So I'm asking you a direct question. Was there any contact in any way between Trump or his associates and the Kremlin or cutouts they had?
I joined this campaign in the summer, and I can tell you that all the contact by the Trump campaign and associates was with the American people. We were fully engaged with taking his message to make America great again all across this country.
But have you ever asked Mr. Trump whether there were any contacts, or I'm just trying to get an answer?
Yeah, of course not. Why would there be any contacts between the campaign? Chris, this is all a distraction, and it's all a part of a narrative to delegitimize the election and to question the legitimacy of this presidency. The American people see right through it.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians. Zero.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd, and there's no basis to it.
Yesterday, the president said whether Moscow was trying to influence the presidential election, he said anything is possible. Can you tell us what you know about the relationship and what the campaign knows and what Donald Trump believes?
We have no relationship. This is an absurd attempt by the Clinton campaign to try and get the focus off of what the real issue is.
Paul, I saw that Trump tweeted yesterday that he has zero investments in Russia. But does Russia have investments in Trump? Would Mr. Trump be willing to release his taxes to provide transparency on this issue?
Mr. Trump has said that his taxes are under audit and he will not be releasing them. It has nothing to do with Russia. It has nothing to do with any country other than the United States and his normal tax auditing processes. So that issue will be dealt with when the audits are done.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
There has been no obstruction. There has been no collusion. There has been leaking by Comey, but there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that.
The New York Times last week put out an article with no direct sources that said that the Trump campaign had constant contacts with Russian spies. Basically, some treasonous type accusations. We have now all kinds of people looking into this. I can assure you, and I've been approved to say this, that the top levels of the intelligence community have assured me that that story is not only inaccurate, but it's grossly overstated, and it was wrong, and there's nothing to it. And so if I can say that to the American people, then what does it say about the story?
You say that the intelligence community says that there were no contacts between anyone in the Trump campaign, any associate of Mr. Trump, and anybody involved as a Russian agent as to the campaign and collusion in the campaign with Russia. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they told me, absolutely. They have made it very clear that story in the New York Times is complete garbage. And quite frankly, they used different words than that, okay?
Who was it that said that?
And when I read back,
who was it that
I'm not going to tell you.
Well, wait a minute.
Tell you that.
Wait a minute, Reince. You're just complained about unnamed sources. You're using an unnamed source.
Well, because I didn't ask for approval to use their name, but I will tell you this. When I say top-level people, I mean top-level people, okay?
So no collusion whatsoever between anybody involved with Trump and anybody involved with Russia in the 2016 campaign?
No. And if you look at Devin Nunes's comments in the actual paper on the record,
Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
He was briefed by the FBI, and what did he do? He turned around and went on the record and said that this story is complete garbage.
Okay.
All this just total garbage, unsourced stuff to accuse an organization of being in constant contact with Russian spies is outrageous. And every day it's something different. It's some other source that is absolutely untrue. Instead of talking about the things that are going on.
My understanding is that what General Flynn has now expressed is that during the transition period, well, we were very clear that during the transition period, he did speak with the ambassador.
I'm talking about during the campaign.
I don't have any, there's nothing that would conclude me that anything different has changed with respect to that time period.
Did you work with the Russians to help the Trump campaign?
Absolutely not. I did nothing that could even be possibly viewed as helping them in any way.
Did you work with the Russians to hurt the Clinton campaign?
Absolutely not. Stuff about me is just literally completely false in every way, shape, and form. I have never met Igor Sechin in my life.
There was no deal with Igor Sechin through which you would personally profit financially?
Absolutely not.
According to the dossier, campaign chairman Paul Manafort chose you to be the point of contact with the Russians.
I never had a conversation with Mr. Manafort, so totally false.
Page was less forthcoming on other issues.
And how did you come to work for the Trump campaign?
I've been the center of so much controversy. I don't like digging into details of the individuals.
Has the FBI contacted you or your lawyers?
I do not talk about ongoing any investigation which may be going on.
It's disgusting. It's so phony.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it. Well, I have not met with any Russians at any time to discuss any political campaign, and those remarks are unbelievable to me and are false, and I don't have anything else to say about that.
What about
so thank you. The suggestion that I participated in any collusion, that I was aware of any collusion with the Russian government to hurt this country, which I have served with honor for 35 years, or to undermine the integrity of our democratic process, is an appalling and detestable lie. I do not have any recollection of meeting or talking to the Russian ambassador or any other Russian officials. If any brief interaction occurred in passing with the Russian ambassador during that reception, I do not remember it. I have never met with or had any conversation with any Russians or any foreign officials concerning any type of interference with any campaign or election in the United States. Further, I have no knowledge of any such conversations by anyone connected to the Trump campaign.
Did you have any communications with Russian officials for any reason during the campaign that have not been disclosed in public or to this committee?
I don't recall it.
General Sessions, respectfully, you're not answering the question.
Well, what is the question?
The question is, Mr. Comey said that there were matters with respect to the recusal that were problematic and he couldn't talk about them. What are they?
Why don't you tell me? There are none, Senator Wyden. There are none. I can tell you that for absolute certainty.
No, nobody that I know of. Nobody
so you're not aware of any contacts during the course of the election?
How many times do I have to answer this question?
Can you just say
Russia is a ruse. Yeah, I know you have to get up and ask a question, so important. Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia. Haven't made a phone call to Russia in years. Don't speak to people from Russia. Not that I wouldn't, I just have nobody to speak to.